how's it going, everybody? Thank you guys for coming here. We are back here with a DeFi panel with a bunch of super legit, solid, big projects over here. So very excited. Why don't we get some intros going? And I'll start it off. I'm Nero. I'm the CEO and founder of MCA, Multi-Chain Advisors, Web3 management consulting firm, and I'm a Spaces host on Twitter.
Yeah, my name's Chris. I'm one of the co-founders of Titan, which is Solana's first meta DEX aggregator. So we find the best prices, and even when our router doesn't provide that, we'll route you to any other router like Jupiter or DFlow.
Hey, I'm Arun Krishnakumar. I lead institutional growth at Camino Finance. We are the largest lending platform on Solana with about 70% market share. Look forward to the chat.
Hey everyone, I'm Tomer. I lead product at the Stellar Development Foundation. Stellar is a different blockchain. It's not Solana. So I'm actually a Trojan horse here to steal all your developers. But joking aside, there's a lot of crossover between the Stellar and Solana ecosystems with great projects like Decaf and Etherfuse and more coming. And we love the Solana ecosystem. So we just launched our new smart contracts runtime last year, and happy to collaborate with anyone who's interested in cross-chain, anything, including DeFi.
Jenya, business development lead for Duro Labs and PIF.
Awesome. Why don't we start off with the first question over here? All of you guys are focused on different parts of the general DeFi stack. How does what you guys build or what you guys are building right now like affect the devs and users? And if you want to touch upon it.
Yeah, I guess I'll just go first. So what Titan does is that we access all the on-chain liquidity that's like completely fragmented on blockchains, right? So we're accessing all your DEXs, every single type of AMM, and we're finding the best way for you to get the best price when you want to swap, let's say, USDC for SOL. So we're basically making the user experience, you don't have to open up like 20 different tabs through all these DEXs or even like 4 different tabs through all the other routers and DEX aggregators. We're making it so you just go to one single platform that can guarantee finding the best price. And beyond all the rigorous mathematics and everything, we just think that like this is a needed product in this highly fragmented space.
Hey, maybe a little bit on Camino. We began our journey about 3 years ago. And although I wasn't part of the Camino team back then, I've been a keen follower and a user of the platform, and which kind of is an amazing user experience in my opinion. In terms of what we do, we lend, borrow. We have several innovative features that are sometimes industry first, sometimes Solana first. We brought the looping mechanism or the multiply as we call it. We optimized lending vaults, particularly on sitting on top of the CLMMs like Orca and Radium, and providing efficiencies there by automating the process of managing the range and getting the best yields out of for liquidity providers. And apart from that, recently we launched Camino Swap, which is something that we'll be focusing on as well. My mandate within Camino is effectively to bring as much institutional liquidity, institutional issuances, and of course institutional attention to the platform as well. So that's kind of my focus area. It is still a long way to go for institutional to really engage at scale on DeFi, but there's quite a lot of work to be done. But that's really kind of where we are going as well.
Awesome. So at Stellar, we really focused a lot on the financial access piece of it all. So one of the biggest problems of blockchain in general and DeFi specifically is that it's really still limited in terms of how many people have access to it. So one of the things that we've done at Stellar is we built what we call the Anchor Network, which is an interoperable network of global on and off ramps. There are many of them. One of them is MoneyGram. So you can actually go with a Stellar USDC-enabled wallet into a MoneyGram agent and get your USDC as cash in the local currency, or vice versa. You can actually on-ramp through cash in your pocket. And when it comes to DeFi, you can actually create a full cash to DeFi experience within the same wallet. So you look at someone like Decaf, for example, which is a wallet in the Solana and Stellar ecosystems. What they do is you're able to go into a MoneyGram agent, put USDC Stellar into your wallet, they kind of like transparently bridge it into USDC on Solana, for example, and from there you can go directly into DeFi. And the cool thing is that you've never left the app. You're in the same app. You went through the entire flow, and now you actually have exposure to DeFi. That's kind of like the big thing that Stellar provides.
Cool. So I guess if you guys were here for the previous chat, I won't rehash all the things that Pyth does, but I'll just sum it up by saying we provide price feeds that act as the data substrate to power DeFi across 100 different blockchains. We also, through our Express Relay product, we actually work with Camino and Titan as well. We're one of the routes that provides liquidity on both those platforms. So a lot of friends up here.
Awesome. Thanks for that information. And I guess in terms of like Solana, one of the main advantages is speed and low cost. But what would you say are other advantages that you guys have been able to leverage as DeFi, protocols working on Solana or building on Solana? I guess this doesn't apply for you, Stellar, but and what other areas would you say you can take advantage from other like blockchains?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, just beyond like low fees, low costs on that side, it's how liquidity actually moves in a Solana ecosystem. The liquidity is very active. It's not passive like you see in other ecosystems, and this changes up the entire game of how you actually get the best prices. The entire market microstructure really does change when people really want to mark prices as close as possible in order to find the best spreads, right? In this case, you have active market makers just taking a very, very active approach instead of being screwed over by MEV bots or anybody like that when it's more passive liquidity, like, XY equals K. So that's like what we've really seen as the main beneficiary of using a very low latency chain.
Yeah, cool. I'll go next. I think one of the more underrated aspects of the Solana ecosystem is that the user onboarding is very simple. Like, Phantom is probably the best wallet in all of crypto. It takes all of 3 minutes to set it up, right? Like, anyone with 2 eyes and a brain can set it up, get a seed phrase going, download the app, get the web browser going, right? The fiat onboarding is very simple too. You could do it through the app, you could do it through the various exchanges. And then, putting all of this together, like, people wonder, like, oh my God, why did Solana gain all this traction with, the on-chain casino and meme coin trading? It's because you could onboard people quicker and more efficiently. And so, downstream of that, to Chris's point, like this leads to like more capital flows and eventually to better capital efficiency. So I think that's one thing. And then, just beyond that, I think because of Solana's trajectory and its history, there's this like trauma bonding that went on during the near-death experience in 2022 and 23, where a lot of the ecosystem participants that didn't die and decided to stick around, they all kind of just like this little brotherhood sort of thing developed, and like there's a lot of tight-knit relationships, and it's really easy to get shit done if through that sort of mechanism. So I've never worked in an ecosystem where people are more open to collaboration, and I think that's super underrated.
I can give you a couple of examples. I started my journey on blockchain with Ethereum, and since I've started using Solana, I've really not gone back to Ethereum as a user experience. I do use the chain from time to time, but it's a pain to go back to Ethereum. So that's one thing, right? So we just take the user experience for granted on Solana. It just is a given. That's a simpler example. In relation to Camino, I think our risk management and LTV, as we call it, loan to value management, it's reliant on what we call this curve, rate curve. And if you are someone who's building a lending platform on Ethereum, you're reliant on these 2-point curve or a very few point curves, after which your liquidation starts massively escalating, because that's pretty much what you can manage with that curve. With Solana, because of this, the seamlessness and the speed and the scale you can achieve on Solana, these LTV curves are so smooth that your liquidation becomes a lot more easier to manage with bots. You're able to stage liquidations over time. So that's just a simple risk management example I'm giving you, and that adds to a lot of capital efficiencies that we can achieve as a lending platform. again, that is probably not possible if Camino had been built on Ethereum or a chain which is not as scalable as Solana. I think that is perhaps probably a little bit more of a complex use case where it's kind of only possible on Solana.
Jump in there.
Yeah, so don't worry, I'm not going to try to shill Stellar here. But I do think, and I want to echo what Jenny said here, we have collaborators in the Solana ecosystem. We actually went down to Apex, Mexico City a couple of months ago. And I think one thing that I think is really amazing with the Solana ecosystem is there's a lot of openness. I think that if in the Ethereum ecosystem, for example, there's a lot of idealism. I think Solana ecosystem is very pragmatic. People are very open to new ideas. There's a lot of disagreement, and I think that's really cool. And at the end of the day, people are not doing things because of a specific ideal, but because they are actually kind of product-led founders. And I think we've had a lot of success. We share that in the Stellar ecosystem, and I really appreciate that about the Solana ecosystem.
No, it makes sense, and I appreciate the answers over there. The Solana is pretty, they're always open to all the new crazy things, so it makes sense. I guess the DeFi landscape is generally very competitive. As you guys are in the DeFi stack and layers of it. How do you guys compete, and what are some of the levers that you guys are using?
Yeah, I think from our side, we see advantages from two layers. The first one is just the algorithmic one. A lot of algorithms out there just aren't meant for cryptocurrency markets or financial markets in general. That's why at Titan we do take a different approach, and that is why our router currently, from our live testing as well as live executions, does seem to be outperforming around 80% of the time. So there's the algorithmic approach. We do expect more and more people to be able to catch up in the next couple of years, right? But there is still this period of time. The other one is access to liquidity. If you don't have access to key liquidity points that do exist on Solana, you're missing a Sol5, you're missing a Radium and Orca, you're just not going to be able to compete effectively. Just because these liquidity sources make up so much of the volume that you have to integrate them into your router in one point or another.
Okay, what do I say here? So the way we approach things that we want to build for DeFi, I mean, there's so much we can build, which will probably, if I start putting the milestones today, it can get us into 2027. So that's so much work that needs to be done. And maybe I can talk about some things that I'm seeing from an institutional perspective. So when I'm going to onboard, let's say if there is BlackRock has issued BUIDL, which is the treasury token. If I have to onboard that, I will really need compliance controls to be in place, like KYC, AML, and all that. So when an issuer like BlackRock wants to go on chain, they'll need to first understand what the on-chain landscape is. So there is a bunch of discovery process that needs to happen, and that needs to be enabled not just by players like RWA.xyz, for instance, but also the DeFi players who have to constantly work with these discovery platforms who are the top of the funnel and be able to facilitate these large issuers coming to you. So that's the first step. The second step, I think, is personally the tooling, which is do we have the right infra on Solana to enable KYC, for instance, or AML. And that's where standards like Token 22 really facilitate those things. In the past, you really need to have a private blockchain for some of these use cases to be checked. But today, you can do it on Ethereum using ERC-3643 or most EVM chains. I think ERC-3643 is also now available on Move. And on Solana, we have Token 22. So you should be able to kind of create these institutional walls in some sense, if I may say, use that word, using just token standards. And then we are thinking about, okay, you've got these token tooling in place. What next? The products need to come on chain. And more importantly, liquidity, as you said. Liquidity is going to be critical. And it's very hard for any asset class in any environment to take off without adequate liquidity. And in order to be able to bring liquidity, we also need to be able to carefully choose assets with the right issuers. Because if you get it wrong and if they're not credible issuances, that is going to hurt liquidity and confidence and trust. So I think broadly, this is the way I think about how we can, I envision the future for DeFi, at least via Camino and the institutional angles of how we can build about it.
I think that a lot of times what we see with DeFi protocols is that they try to optimize on the margins. And so obviously, you can see things like, various incentives, more liquidity. But at the end of the day, I would say that it's very difficult to build long-lasting product when that's kind of like your focus area. I would say that what we're seeing in the Stellar ecosystem and what I'd love to see more is kind of like really focus on kind of like the last mile, focus on the users themselves, and this question of how we can like grow the pie in general rather than basically have the same exact users that are just switching between protocols because like a 0.1 APY like difference. And so I think we're seeing wallets that are more like use case wallets that are adopting DeFi, and I think that's really exciting. It's a lot stickier if you have we have this wallet in Chile, for example, called Meru. They've integrated lending borrowing protocol from the Stellar ecosystem called Blend, and you're seeing like this is extremely sticky because at the end of the day, these users are not as educated as people in this room, and what they have is what's in front of them, and at the end of the day, it's this protocol. So I think as a DeFi protocol, I think what I tried to do is to actually go and create relationships with with the actual applications that are closest to the user, and build kind of like long-lasting relationships, things that are more sticky than just optimized on APY.
Cool. Yeah, so I think our primary advantage is that, obviously we've been running this very reliable infrastructure for, I guess 4.5, 5 years now. We have a very good flow for how to deploy on new blockchains, right? We've done over 100 different deployments on everything from SVM chains to all manner of EVM chains, Move, like Cosm, Wasm, you name it. So we're quite familiar with the deployment process, all the code base, all the ecosystems. So that's on the deployment side, and then like launching new price feeds is we have basically a process that works like clockwork. So spinning up new price feeds for us, both on the crypto side and the TradFi side, like we can get a feed up in a day if we really want to. Obviously, we want to make sure everything's buttoned up and clean, but we can really speed run the listing of new assets and tokens, which obviously, like given the pace of how things move now, like people want feeds as soon as a token launches, especially for perps. And then the third and most important thing is that our documentation is very simple and straightforward. So like if you have one crack dev who understands how to read API docs, you can integrate in a day. So I think between those three things, I think it's a pretty strong advantage over everyone else. And we also have a very dedicated ecosystem kind of relationship management team where we work very closely both with all the chains and all the apps that we partner with. So there's a very high touch process there, and if you want to get our attention, you'll get it, and we'll work closely with you to make sure you're successful.
That makes sense. Appreciate the transparency in the answers over there. As you guys operate in different layers of the DeFi stack, how do you guys approach interoperability and integrations across the board?
Yeah, so I guess from our perspective, composability, being able to integrate with anybody on chain is a very critical portion, because I said before, if you're missing any like key liquidity source, you basically can't provide the best price in that scenario. So like it's actually very refreshing, a Solana ecosystem where everybody is willing to help each other out. Everybody provides access when you ask them, when you meet them, everybody's just willing to help in any manner. And that's really allowed us to really compose all the DEXs that provide the majority of liquidity on Solana onto our routing system. And that's what's really required. And then you can see people building their own products on top of various router APIs as well. So it's this interplay. It's like whatever we build, other people can build on top of it as well.
Again, if I have to talk about interoperability, I would probably touch upon liquidity in that context, because at the moment, if I'm going to bring an asset on chain, it can go on Stellar, it can go on Solana, it can go on any EVM chains out there, which effectively means that liquidity is fragmented. And interoperability platforms like Wormhole really facilitate that in terms of bringing liquidity, unifying liquidity or aggregating liquidity. I think that's definitely the direction I think the on-chain ecosystem should be open about and work towards that.
Yeah, I think from the L1 perspective, one thing that we learned throughout the years is that cross-chain is such a moving target, and so there's no point in trying to pick winners. I think that if you look at the world of like bridging, especially on retail, there's been a massive shift towards like intent-based bridging, which is very different from where we were a year or two ago. So as an L1, we're trying to be as kind of like open to everyone as possible, and to not choose winners.
Yeah, I mean, we use Wormhole natively in the protocol to, to get the price feeds across all the chains that we work with. So, this is very native to our architecture and the product. We're chain agnostic. Like we're not, like I said before, we're not here to pick winners. Obviously, we see, where things work and where they don't, but we're natively cross chain, and we're gonna keep it that way because. We see that's where the world is going. Obviously, there's not going to be a need for all these things in the future, but we're in that period now where we're going to figure out which ones are going to stay, which ones aren't. And so, from that perspective, I think we'll always be cross-chain.
It makes sense. The multi-chain future. Cool. So why don't we get things a bit spicy here with some hot takes? So for the hot takes, each of us will provide a hot take, and feel free to jump in and rebuttal and provide your opinions if you don't agree. So I guess I'll kick it off over here. In my opinion, I think DeFi is great for the current niche audience that it's serving, but I think a significant amount of UI and UX updates and maybe even like a centralized front end is required to actually onboard the masses and the normies and retail investors.
Okay. I personally think there has got to be a future where we stop talking about Stellar, Solana, EVM, and people just use stuff. This conversation is getting streamed. We don't talk about TCP/IP anymore. I think we need to start at some point. I mean, probably too early in that journey, but we'll need to stop talking about chains and start talking applications. Very much in line with what you just said.
Not controversial at all.
I agree. I think at least from what we're seeing and some of the conversations I'm in, you see apps like Infinex and DeFi.app where they're trying to do this unified experience on the front end where you basically have your generic account and you can swap and lend and trade perps across any number of chains, which is super cool because it's kind of like what you said, it's like a centralized point where you could do this, and it kind of replaces the centralized exchange experience because this is more DeFi native. So I for sure think some portion of the market is going to head in that direction, but I think in general the next wave, if you think about it practically, we've already kind of exhausted let's do 100 perp dexes and 50 bar lend protocols and the 18th deployment of Uniswap. No one gives a shit. We're kind of already maxed out at that, right? Although we'll probably see some unique use cases that that run away in that category. But the next wave is just going to be apps, and the apps are likely to they're not going to be crypto first. It's just going to be an app that has some crypto elements, and they're not going to market it as such, right? So I think the next wave is going to be app-driven rather than protocol-driven.
Yeah, I would definitely agree on that side. It's whichever one gives a better user experience and has that liquidity and that volume, right, for you to really experience. Nobody really minds that Hyperliquid is just 4 servers in Tokyo. You're just having a good experience and you get massive airdrops. So those are 2 things that are pretty important. And I think it's just going to keep continuing. It's you have liquidity on this chain, you have a good user experience, people are just going to use it.
All of our metrics are shit. TVL is shit. Active addresses are shit. Everyone likes to talk about revenue right now. That's also shit. They're all shit. Now, I'm not saying that the problem is that we're all just looking under the streetlight for things that are readily available. But the things that are readily available are just not great. We really need to go deeper into the apps to understand what's going on. Web2 has had it figured out for decades right now with the way that they look at users. And because we're so excited that public blockchains have public data sets, we're just looking at the wrong numbers.
I definitely agree with that on the metric side. The only one caveat I'd have is I think revenues are probably the only metric that probably makes sense because dollars pay the bills.
But what you really want to measure is impact, right? You want to measure the impact on people's lives, which is a kind of like some combination of like how many people are getting impact and what's the level of impact. And the revenue stuff is really focused on protocols, right? It's for Camino, obviously you want, as a bottom line from a commercial perspective, you want to look at revenue. But is this actually like telling us a lot about the product market fit? I'm not sure.
Okay, let me chime in quick. I agree. Revenue is the only thing that matters. Yes, the other metrics can be improved, and there's all sorts of bullshit like active wallet addresses, which like doesn't matter because anyone can spin up 1,000 of them. But revenue absolutely matters. And fun fact, Solana makes up 55 to 60% of all on-chain revenue across not just protocol fees but apps. In the last day, I think Axiom, which is like a trading terminal, Pump, and Meteora all are between like 7 and 3 million in revenue on a daily basis, which is like these are high 9-figure, like almost billion-dollar businesses in run rate. That's insane, and I think that needs to be studied. And there's something going on there, and these guys are absolutely printing. So, God bless them.
I'm just going to add to the disagreement bandwagon, by the way. So TVL, particularly in the Solana ecosystem, is looked down on in some ways, which is particularly because we have this PTSD from the post FTX era, where the Ethereum folks were really coming after us and saying, you don't have any TVL, we have so much TVL, and we had to push back. That era is gone now. We had $300 million worth of TVL back then, DeFi TVL back then. Now we are like in the 15 billion or something like that. But if you look at traditional finance, how do you compare the best companies? Like if you go to BlackRock, you talk about BlackRock, look at it as a $10 trillion asset manager. If you talk about Apollo, you talk about it as like $900 billion asset manager. What does it reflect? It reflects that trust that investors have with that institution to leave such big amounts of money with them. It's the same thing with blockchains. If Ethereum has $60 billion worth of TVL, that is the amount of trust. That is a sign of trust. Doesn't necessarily mean that the economic activity on the chain is better than what it is on Solana. So Solana, in that sense, is already trumped Ethereum and all the EVM chains put together in some sense. But TVL is an important metric. And as a Solana maxi, I sometimes disagree with our own takes, and this is one of them, actually.
Any thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, I would just say that I do think revenue is pretty important, but then you can also look at present value of what your future revenue is going to be taking a look at. But revenue is a pretty good indication that you have product market fit. Like how many people gone to the seed round of Pump Fund? If you did, you made a complete killing. How many VCs want to reach out to Axiom and all these other companies to try and put a check in? Like they don't really need to raise money; they're making buckets. Yeah. So it's like you're getting all this product market fit. The market is telling you that they want it. How far that'll go? Don't know, but they're currently just making insane amounts of revenue for the amount of people that they actually have.
And they retain all the equity.
So we should have started this panel with this question, man.
I think I win for the take.
Okay, I'll go. I think because of the ivory tower circle jerking in the ETH-L1 ecosystem, it's going to become significantly less relevant over time, especially as liquidity, attention, and users have been fragmented across all the L2s. So unless they figure out how to properly scale and bring everything back and settle to the L1, Solana is going to continue running away with it, and the train has left the station.
Yeah, let me jump on this one because you've seen a bunch of EVM apps just try port over to Solana at this point. Really, I just don't see it succeeding unless they have a total shift in mindset. They're just bringing over 2021 EVM type of thought process over. Liquidity isn't passive anymore. Liquidity is fully active, and if you still have that mindset, you're just gonna get run over by all the applications, all the teams that are building on Solana today.
Solana to 1,000, baby. Let's go.
Let's go. I think that's a perfect way to close this off. Thank you, gents. Appreciate it. Keep crushing.
Thank you.
Thank you.